In this conversations, I'm going to discuss three things. Number one, I will talk about Vladimir Putin's grand announcement that he's going to create an alternate world order. The second thing I will talk about is the SCO summit, which is going to be held in Pakistan in 2-3 days. And the third thing that I'm going to really talk about is India and whether India is committed fully to the SCO, to BRICS, or India should leave these organizations. Welcome to Khanversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan, your host, and today I'm going to talk to you about a grand pronouncement made by Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia. He is planning to build an alternate world order, and he made this statement while meeting with the new president of Iran, President Masoud Pezeshkian. Very difficult name to pronounce. It is Pezeshkian. So while meeting the Iranian president, maybe a day or two before Israel massively attacks Iran. There are lots and lots of talk of Israel devastating Iran's oil fields or destroying its nuclear capabilities or punishing it in such a way that people will rise up in pain and cause a regime change. So once again, we are talking about regime change in Iran. It is in this context that the Russian president meets with the Iranian president and declares that he is trying to build a new world order. We will talk about that. But before that, I want to let you know that we are into a very interesting period of diplomacy. So there is a meeting going on in Ashgabat, which is the capital of Turkmenistan, one of those, it is like peaceful North Korea, an isolated post-Soviet republic, a Muslim majority country which does not really engage with anybody else, is not even part of many of the Central Asian multilateral institutions like the SCO. But apparently now there's a new forum that is being created. It's called, this is a plenary meeting of the interrelation of times and civilizations as the basis of peace and development. Anyway, so Turkmenistan is now getting into the game of international diplomacy and also trying to become more integrated in its neighborhood. So it is here that Vladimir Putin met with the Iranian president, Masoud Pezeshkian, who also happens to be an academic. So, as I was saying, this week is very important because in a few days, the SCO summit for heads of government takes place in Pakistan on 15th and 16th of October. This is an important organization. I will talk to you. And then a few days after that, about a week after that, is the Kazan summit of the BRICS. So you're going from, it's like building up one after the other. So first you have this new organization that's taking birth in Turkmenistan, and then you have the SCO, which is a regional trade and security organization. At the heart of it is Central Asia, and then you expand to BRICS and you meet in Kazan in Russia. So, and these are clearly non-Western initiatives. In many ways, they are coming into existence because the member countries have been more or less isolated from the Western dominated global order, and they are also at least aspiring to challenge the Western global order. So before we get into the details, if you have not already subscribed to Khanversations, do subscribe to Khanversation, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this video with your friends and your socio-political network. So I find this very fascinating, this meeting that President Masoud Pezeshkian travels all the way to Turkmenistan to meet the Russian president. They announced that the trade deals of about $1.7 billion of weapons that Iran is providing. Iran is selling drones, manufacturing drones in Russia now. And the US intelligence says that not only that, but the Iran has been supplying short-range interballistic missiles also to Russia. So basically the ones that can be just popped across the border. So in that sense, Iran is one of the few countries that's providing substantive support to Russia in its war against Ukraine. But now with this anticipation of a massive Israeli attack on Iran's key assets, whether it's refineries or its nuclear capabilities. It seems that, at least publicly, Joe Biden is saying that no to attacking Iran's nuclear facilities, but I think nobody should take Biden seriously. He has zero credibility. He has zero credibility in this country. He has zero credibility in his own political party. The Democrats kicked him out and told him to retire. And so let's not take Joe Biden seriously at all. So I think this decision is going to be made by Netanyahu and Netanyahu alone as to what he targets. But the Iranians have been indulging in massive diplomacy, and they've been basically telling Gulf countries that if Israel attacks their oil facilities or nuclear facilities, Iran will retaliate and probably destroy the oil facilities in the Gulf, which would create a huge problem. 20% of all oil comes out of the Hormuz channel, and so it's going to have a devastating impact on global economy, pushing many countries into recession. So we will see what happens. But what is also interesting is that in this discussion, I'm going to focus on this claim of Vladimir Putin that he is building a new world order. He seems to think of himself as the alternative to the United States, as if this world is divided into two superpowers, the US and Russia, and so he is creating another one. When actually more and more people think that as the war goes along, Russia is going to become weaker and weaker and essentially become a client state of China, and that it'll become more and more dependent economically and otherwise on China. So if Putin is thinking of building an alternative world order, where is China in that world order? And I think that discussion we will see partly in Pakistan next week when the SCO summit takes place, and then we will also see them probably in the final communique of the BRICS in Kazan, Russia. I think one of the more powerful force which might help Putin indeed create an alternate world order is US foreign policy itself. The United States loves to talk about rule-based order, about liberal order, about international law. But during these two wars, the US has come across as a warmonger, just supplying one side with billions and billions of dollars of weapons, unlimited diplomatic support. And so its commitment to Israel and its commitment to Ukraine has been such that the two countries do not feel the need to even have a ceasefire or negotiate for peace, and so the war continues endlessly. We have seen a one-year war in the Middle East. It's just been expanding every time the Biden administration says that we don't want to see the war expand or escalate or become a much wider war. It continues to become a much wider war. More than 6-7 countries are already involved. Israel is constantly attacking, at least on the 4 fronts. It's attacking in West Bank, it's attacking in Gaza, it's destroying Lebanon, and it's also bombing Yemen. And now it is going to attack Iran. So the Biden administration's foreign policy has failed, but its bigger failure has been in actually upholding the rule-based order. It has continued to undermine the rules of international order by supporting countries that it likes. For example, when Turkey bought S-400, immediately sanctions were imposed on Turkey, even though Turkey has been a long-time NATO ally of the United States. But when India did the same thing, put forward a bigger order of S-400 than Turkey, then the United States gave India an exemption on national security. The US also had given a similar exemption to India for building the Chabahar port in Iran. No one else is allowed to trade with Iran, but India is allowed. So that's one example of how the United States has repeatedly tried to undermine its own rule-based order by picking favorites. And of course, when Russia attacked Ukraine, very quickly the word genocide was being bandied around. And now that Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza, the international courts have spoken to it, the United Nations have spoken to it, but the United States continues to support this indefinitely with no limits. So the United States' violation of its own rule-based order is scaring all the other countries. They have no more faith in the international order. They are looking for alternative models. And this is probably the biggest advantage that China and Russia now enjoy, is this lack of faith in the United States and its adherence to the very order it advocates. And therefore, it is quite possible that more and more countries will be attracted towards this alternate world order, which promises at the core to respect the internal politics of, or not interfering in the domestic politics of countries, going back to the old principle of sovereignty on the basis of which the United Nations was created, and respecting the written rule of law, especially rules that have been articulated by the United Nations and the UN Security Council. So they feel that they can build an alternative order on these two principles. One is the United Nations and international law, and the other is based on non-interference in each other's domestic politics. Well, we'll see what happens. It is very clear that the world is fragmenting, at least in the economic sphere. There are different economic orders emerging. The World Bank, for those of you in India who have been watching Khanversations regularly, if you remember, I did a show in which I talked about how senior or number 2 person in IMF, the senior economist, how she, Geeta Gopinathan, how she argued that the fragmentation of the global economy due to geopolitics might actually lead to about 7% loss in global GDP, which means it's a massive recession, a global recession. So anyway, as I said, that in this show, I'm going to talk about 3 things. I'm going to talk about Vladimir Putin's goal of creating an alternative world order. I will also talk about the SCO summit in Pakistan. And then I will ask this question: is India going to be part of this new world order, or India is going to be out of this new world order, or is India going to sit on the fence and actually play a spoiler when it comes to the alternate world order? So we'll talk about that towards the end of this session. So on 15th and 16th of October, Pakistan will hold SCO Heads of Government Summit. Apparently, so far, the people who have confirmed who will be participating are Prime Ministers of China, Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. The only Prime Minister who will not be there is India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And instead of him, we will see India's Foreign Minister Dr. Jaishankar participate in representing India. And we will also see the first Vice President of Iran. So basically, Iran and India will not be sending their heads of governments, but the heads of governments or the prime ministers of all other countries will be participating. It will be chaired by Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. This is an opportunity for Pakistan, perhaps after a really long time, to play an important role on the global stage, to be hosting a very important event. SCO is important. It's about 40% of the world's population is represented by the SCO countries, and I think close to 30% of the global GDP. So it's not a small organization. It's a meaningful organization, even though the focus is essentially on Central Asian countries. The presence of India and China and Russia and Iran and Pakistan gives it a lot of health. It also means that 1, 2, 3, it has 4 nuclear powers who are part of it. And so it's an important organization. But unfortunately, it appears that Pakistan could potentially mess this up. There are Baloch rebels who are targeting Chinese, and just a couple of days ago, 2 Chinese engineers were killed. So there's the fear that during the SCO summit, there will be attacks on Chinese engineers who are working in Pakistan. Basically, the Baloch want to create an awareness through terrorism of their cause and embarrass the Pakistani government. So the Pakistani government is basically going to have a curfew. I mean, imagine having an international event with a curfew. This is the difference between India and Pakistan. While India was hosting the G20 summit, the whole country was coming together and trying to make India look good. And so the government considered its population as an asset. So that's why India hosted so many events and all over the country, including in Kashmir. Whereas in Pakistan, everybody is trying to take this opportunity to undermine their own country and their own government. So it's not just the Baloch. It's quite possible the TTP might also attack to embarrass Pakistan. And also the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf is about to launch a massive protest because the government has refused Imran Khan's sister and his lawyer from meeting with him. So this is enough reason to embarrass your own country. So I hope the event goes well, and the things that are important that need to be discussed to some extent have already been discussed by the ministries of foreign affairs in this. So there will be a more formal aspect to the conference, and the prime ministers who have come will obviously try to come to an important agreement so that they can have a meaningful declaration at the end of it. But if Pakistan's security situation deteriorates during the day, it will be an embarrassment both to the SCO as well as to Pakistan, because one of the more important goals of this organization is to combat terrorism and extremism within these countries. And if terrorists and extremists do something, then it will show that not only is Pakistan a failed state, but SCO and its members have not really worked together. Even though there's at every event of SCO, this talk about countering terrorism, Iran has proposed creating an SCO police, which the Russians seem to like. But I really don't see any cooperation. Where is India and Pakistan cooperating in preventing cross-border terrorism? So I don't know. This organization has been around for many years. What is its success in suppressing extremism and terrorism? Maybe someone needs to do an audit. And now turning to the third question of India, what will India do in this? And that is an important and, shall we say, very important from a strategic point of view. India is clearly becoming a major player on the global stage. It is now the fifth biggest economy. Very soon, as early as 2027, it could be the third biggest economy in the world after the US and China, surpassing both Japan and Germany. It is the biggest importer of weapons. It has the second biggest army in the world. It is a nuclear power. It's very strategic. It has the fastest growing economy. So India is really very important. But India is playing this game of multi-alignment and trying to pursue, when it talks about being a force for good in the world, and then justifies many of its contrarian actions by saying we are doing this to pursue our own national interests. So if you're pursuing your own national interests, then you can't also be at the same time a force for good in the world. You're just trying to be a force for good for yourself, and that's a good thing. But then your international significance becomes very little if you have nothing to bring to the table. In 2023, India was the chairperson of the SCO, and India completely undermined the SCO summit, actually in 2022, by hosting it virtually. They kind of sabotaged the SCO, heads of states and head of government summit, by completely sabotaging it because India didn't want to be seen as hosting Putin or Xi Jinping. So if you don't want to be seen publicly with these people, then why are you part of this organization? And I think the only reason why I think India is there is to basically prevent China and Pakistan from achieving their goals, geopolitical and diplomatic goals. So India is more like a spoiler in SCO than an asset. And I wonder when these countries will bring it up. And it becomes much more interesting because a week after this very summit, there is the Kazan summit of BRICS, and India is another important country. India wants to be part of the alternate global order because India feels that it is suffering from certain imbalances in the existing global order. For example, India thinks that the world has changed significantly in the last 75 years, and so India should be an important player in managing multilateral institutions like the World Bank, the UN, and the UN Security Council. And most importantly, India deserves clearly more than France or Britain to have a veto or permanent membership in the UN Security Council. And the fact that India doesn't have that makes India very unhappy with the international world order. But it does not want to create another alternative world order, I'm sure, because then it will be subordinate to China and maybe even Russia. So India, because it is not the second most or the most powerful country, finds that it has to be playing second fiddle either to the United States or to China. So it tries to be in both and tries to see if it can get advantage. If it fully commits to SCO and BRICS, then it will be isolated from G7. And the chances of gaining support from G7 for India's membership in the UN Security Council will diminish. And also the technological and financial benefits. India wants to replace China as the global manufacturer, global factory, and for that it needs Western investments, Western technology. So in that sense, the biggest competition in the world today for India is in SCO and in BRICS, which is with Pakistan and China. And as we have seen in the past few years, India has slowly moved away from Russia and is becoming more and more strategically aligned with the West. So in that sense, I think India will at some point have to decide whether it wants to be part of SCO and fully commit to it and also to BRICS, or it should leave, or if it continues to remain on the fence, then at some point India will become less significant to both the US and to China-Russia combined, because they'll say, well, they're not taking a firm stance on either side, so okay, let them be here as long as they don't be a spoiler. But if India becomes a spoiler for both of the groupings, then it's going to be a problem for India. But if India becomes a country which is there but does not make any contribution, then it hurts its own desire to become an important player in the world. Recently, the Western countries, the Arab countries, when they host global summits now to deal with the Gaza situation, are not inviting India to their events. Even though GCC did invite India, that's primarily because of the close relations India enjoys with United Arab Emirates. But UAE is also committed to BRICS. UAE is also committed, is also trying to join the SCO. So in that sense, eventually, India will have to really ask itself this question. When SCO and BRICS are concerned, is India in? Is it out? Or is it going to sit on the fence indefinitely? So I hope you found this discussion interesting and thought-provoking. So if you did, please subscribe to Khanversations, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this video with your friends and your socio-political network. Until next time, I'm your host, Muqtedar Khan. Take care.